Welcome to our webinar, What's Get Measured Gets Managed. This is a webinar on urban forest management and data, hosted by me and us at HUGSI and together with our friends at PlanIT Geo. So warmly welcome to all of you joining this live or viewing this event at a later time. And we're going to spend a few minutes together, 45 to be more precise, and talk about this subject from 3 different perspectives. And my name is Erik Svan. I'm part of the Husqvarna group, working with HUGSI.green. I will be talking a bit about that and the global state of urban trees. And with me today, we also have Ian Hannu and Chris Pfeiffer. Perhaps you can just introduce yourselves also.
Sure thing. Hello, everyone. Thanks for joining us today. My name is Ian Hannu. I'm with PlanIT Geo based in Denver, Colorado. I'm the CEO and founder at PlanIT Geo.
Yes, and hello, everyone. Chris Pfeiffer here, Director of Urban Forestry Consulting Services, and I'm based out of Harrisburg, Pennsylvania. So thanks for joining us.
Super. And we have speakers from various locations, but we also have a lot of attendees from many different locations around the globe, from Australia, New Zealand, up to South America, Chile, Mexico, US, Canada, and a lot of participants also from Europe. So again, warmly welcome. And to get a feeling of who is here, we're going to try to add a poll now. Hopefully you can see it in the right-hand tab. And if you're on mobile, you need to sort of open that tab side. And there is a poll on your profession. Who's on this call? Please respond to that. And if you don't find your particular occupation here, you can also add it in the chat. And please say hello and where you're at and all of that. So we get to know you and all of that. So I think that could be a really fun having a go at that. So please add your profession so we can follow up on that. And in this webinar, we will be first taking the overall view, the perspective all globally, and then we will focus in more on how to measure the urban canopy with Ian, followed up with the going from the measurement to management hosted by Chris. So I think hopefully this will be a great journey together. And please use the chat to give some shares. We have these emojis going, but you can also post a question at any time on the questions tab, and then we will pick that up in the end, wrapping up with the Q&A session. So anytime you have a question, please post it. So seems like there's a lot of things going now in the chat and with the poll, so I'm super happy about that. So great, let's get going. And I will be starting off with saying a few words about HUGSI. So some of you may know about it, but still I think it's relevant to state HUGSI, that's Husqvarna Urban Green Space Index. And with this initiative, we are trying to influence decision makers to greenify urban areas globally. And HUGSI, that's a comprehensive tool that right now cover 177 cities in 60 countries across the globe. And for these cities, we are quantifying greenness. We enable you to track your development and that you can benchmark with other cities across the globe on your green space data. So you can pretty much say that this is like a fitness app for urban green spaces. So what can we tell then about this? This is how you can actually consume the green city data that we have. This is an example of the city of Dortmund in Germany. So we have a bunch of different green KPIs that we call it. So using satellite data, we are assessing these cities pretty much constantly, but we track them once a year on their individual prime day. So in this case, we can see the overall greenness percentage in the city of Dortmund as an example, 58% green, built up by trees and grass, or tall vegetation and low vegetation. We are assessing the vitality and health of urban green space by this analysis, and we derive a lot of different KPIs. And from this, we can get this nice map, so we get an understanding about the distribution of green space throughout the city. But since we also do these yearly assessments, we can also determine the changes and the development year to year. So in this case, you can see the changes happening in Dortmund from, in this case, 2019 to 2020. Where we have the red ones, that's negative change from a vegetation perspective, and the green ones, positive development from a vegetation perspective. So there is a lot of development ongoing in pretty much all the cities, and some are sort of positive, some are negative from a vegetation perspective, but all in all, you can have a net change then that could either be positive or negative. So I think that could be really interesting and relevant for cities across to really keep track on. And with this data, we are compiling this index where we can, based on these different KPIs, determine a ranking and a rating of these cities in the green space rating. And you can see the number one is the city of Charlotte, North Carolina in the US. And then we have this the long list of all the cities in the index where you can see where you're at. So that's sort of pretty much all in all what HUGSI is about. But from this, we can also zoom in on the tree data. And I think that could be relevant to get a starting point in that, understanding what's the overall global tree canopy data. And in 2020, the latest edition that we have, data covered from entire last year, we know that the global average of tree cover is 25%. And this is only in the sort of urban built-up parts of the cities where you have a certain density of population. So it's within a certain boundary. But 25% is the global average. So you can compare this with the leading city of the index, Charlotte. They have 56% in urban tree canopy cover. So that's a huge difference and a great achievement of Charlotte, of course. So with averages, you understand that there's also a lot of ups and downs and the cities that perform better than the average and below. Looking at the vitality, I think that's also a relevant number to keep track on. And the average vitality of urban trees during last year was 0.68. It doesn't say so much, but this is the NDVI scale, and ranging from -1 to +1. And you usually say that everything above 0.50 is pretty good, and above 0.66 is really good when it comes to vitality. So overall, the urban tree vitality is really good on average. So that's good to know. Looking at the top 10 cities, knowing that the average is 25%, we see that there are a bunch of cities that perform really, really well, with Charlotte on top with 56%, and the tree vitality. You can see that there are a lot of cities with really high numbers and good health in their tree canopy. So I think that's a positive message for sure. And looking at the different regions, we divide the world into certain regions. So we can also track how this looks from different perspectives. And of course, when you benchmark, it's really important that you benchmark with your peers. So different cities has different natural conditions in having trees. If you're in the forest areas, if you're in grasslands, if you're more in desert areas, of course you have different preconditions in growing trees. But comparing to the global average of 25%, we can see that Europe, Central East Asia, and North America are well above that. And then we have the other regions that are a bit below. But that's from natural reasons. But it's still good to know and how you can compare these global averages, the regional averages, with the averages of your city. And also with the tree vitality, we can see different levels of health in the urban canopy. And looking at the 5 years of data that we have today, which is pretty amazing. We have covered and tracked from the beginning 98 cities. Now we are at 177. But for these original 98 cities, we can see that during these 5 years, we have a small, slight decline in the urban tree canopy for these cities. Overall, we can see a increase of urban green space for these cities, but the tree canopy is actually declining slightly. Looking also at tree vitality, it's a bit more of a happy message. Here we can see a pretty strong growth in vitality and an improvement in vitality over these years. So these are some of the learnings that could be good to have in mind when we continue looking more in detail with this. So I can see a lot of things happening in the chat, and we also have a lot of things coming out of the vote. So let's also launch our second vote for today. And I will be just launching this poll now. And it's about if you know your tree canopy cover of your community. Do you have that kind of data? What is your sort of measurement in this? Or if you don't know, please state that. So you have the votes open now as we continue over to Ian. Please continue with presenting PlanIT Geo and of course how you can measure urban canopy data more in detail.
Great. All right, Eric, you can hear me okay?
Yeah.
I will share my screen here. We'll get going. And just let me know. You can see the screen all right, Eric?
Yep, looking good.
Okay, terrific. Thanks for the introduction on HUGSI. It's really exciting for PlanIT Geo to be contributing really to HUGSI as a global collaborative platform. So what Chris and I are going to speak to is about the data that you can collect either from the field or from looking up above with urban canopy analysis, and how that leads into better management practices. If you're not familiar with PlanIT Geo, we were founded in 2012. We provide consulting services, technology solutions, and geospatial software for anything having to do with urban green assets. We do this globally through in the US as well as with our partners abroad. And just a quick look at our consulting services, and then I'll follow up with a quick look at our software. We have a geospatial team, and they use a variety of different data sets to analyze cities across the entire landscape. We have, which is what we'll be talking mostly about today. We have a field team, so these are all certified arborists by ISA who collect data in the field, and I'll talk briefly about that and how that measurement of information leads to better management. And then we have the group that Chris leads, and this is our urban forestry consulting team looking at urban forest management plans, urban forest master plans, and all of the analysis that goes into that. So very quickly at a high level, PlanIT Geo really is looking at every way we can contribute to the greening of cities. So our 4 software products really can reflect that. I'll speak briefly about Tree Plotter Inventory. We'll talk a bit more about Canopy, of course, but this is how we're constructed for different stakeholders, different entities involved in sustaining and achieving higher greening in cities. This is really what we're all about and how we approach this. We have software clients in around 20 countries now, and most of our products you can translate into any language. I think we have 8 or 9 languages now, Romanian, Spanish, Belgian, and so forth. So that's really exciting. Well, let's start off and just quickly look at what we like to call green asset inventories. So this is data collected in the field, or what we would call a bottom-up method. You have to know what you have in order to manage it. And this is one approach. And then the Canopy analysis is another approach, of course. So these tools and others allow you to really assess individual assets, look at their condition, the type, the location, the recommended maintenance that you might have. And we do this through a GIS approach. We also integrate with CAD and with high resolution imagery sources. And this information collected in the field with really good rich maps allows you to derive a lot of analysis to drive your policies, your planning, your budgeting, maybe your staffing needs, your partnerships, how you're going to accomplish your greening efforts. We also calculate the benefits of urban trees using the iTree software, which we integrate with Tree Plotter, which is exciting. So once you have this data on the ground, you can pull this together into more of a work management approach. You can summarize your costs, your hours, where the work is in the landscape that needs to get done. So kind of combining that mapping and visualization with the workflow for whether it's tree care or parks maintenance and so forth. So again, all that data at the ground level, and now we're going to switch and talk back to the Canopy assessment. So using high resolution satellite imagery, LiDAR, aerial photography, or LiDAR, you can then do a top-down analysis of your green spaces, your gray infrastructure as well. And this, of course, from this approach, you're looking from top down and you can analyze any type of property. And with the data that we'll be showing, you can then set tree canopy cover goals and other targets. Maybe it's access or walkability, creating those kinds of corridors, and so forth. You can monitor the changes over time. And with that measurement, then you have better lens to look through when you're trying to implement your programs, whether they're management policies and so forth. So that's what Chris is going to talk about more, is using this data from a management perspective. So PlanIT Geo, we're thrilled to be partnering with Husqvarna. The HUGSI platform is just really exciting. It is the first tool that is available globally to monitor urban greening, as Eric told you. So, for a very low cost, cities can become part of this collaborative platform, and every single year moving forward, their city can then contribute to some of those metrics that Eric showed us. So the more cities that become part of HUGSI, I think the more robust our measurement of greening in cities and those trends that Eric showed are going to be. So it's really, really exciting. It also adds, as Eric showed, the health index in the distribution of urban green spaces in cities, which is really critical information. So with PlanIT Geo solutions and high resolution data that's available, we can now analyze tree cover at a very, very granular or detailed level. We have a data set across the entire United States right now that I'll show you that is 60 centimeter resolution. We update that pretty much continuously, but then in other parts of the world, we're looking to do similar approaches and be able to analyze these high resolution changes as often as you'd like. With the high resolution data, then of course you can pinpoint the specific gains in tree cover, losses, and the opportunities to expand canopy. So here's another way to say that, is that I like to think of it as HUGSI provides a broad level across the globe of how cities are greening and how they're changing. And we provide a similar information on one city at a time at a high, sort of in high def, if you think about our TVs these days. So that you can see on the bottom right, the individual green polygons picking up very, very tiny trees so we can track where we have plantings. This little video is demonstrating the data set that we have in the United States. It is a 60 centimeter resolution, And I went from Tallahassee, Florida to Temecula, California, just to show what the high resolution data looks like. So those green areas are the existing tree canopy cover. So we actually have this off the shelf nowadays in the US, and that's the direction we're going internationally as well. There are a lot of benefits to having the high resolution data. You can prioritize on a more site-specific level, and that can inform all the engineering and development practices that are changing the landscapes in cities. We can, of course, overlay a variety of geospatial data and temporal analysis. We can look at changes in tree canopy cover, and we can do that and break that information out for different audiences, maybe for land use types, for planning purposes, maybe political boundaries. So you might have city council districts like we do in the US, and you want to show which areas of the city are increasing or decreasing. We can also overlay high resolution canopy data with various social and health data sets to look at correlations in terms of public health outcomes and so forth. The data allows you to monitor the specific impact of your policies and of your programs, which again is what Chris is going to talk about next. And then you can incorporate the high resolution data into your city's GIS database or GIS environment and a variety of types of plans, which is another thing that Chris is going to speak to. But to just wrap up here, here's some of the sort of like final products. They could be infographics, reporting, fact sheets that we create so that our clients, that our city clients, can then go and help influence policymakers and decision makers. So we roll up information across the landscape, the benefits and ecosystem services that urban forests are providing, and try to tell that story. We also create interactive tools. So here we have health and equity data sets that we can overlay in our software and create scenarios, see the hotspots in communities where trees and other green spaces can make the greatest impact on public health. And just my last example, we created this story map. You can, if you'd like, get the URL for this to explore it. There was a large hurricane that hit parts of Florida in the United States. And so we've done a high resolution tree canopy change analysis. We can see the before and after effects, how much canopy was lost, and where we can focus efforts for the recovery. And I will transition over to Chris.
Yeah, and perhaps while he's sharing his screen, we can share some insights from our polls. And the first one where we are capturing like who are attending this webinar, we have learned that 29% of you are arborists tuning in. We have 18% working with urban tree care for municipalities or cities. We have 16% representing researchers and academia. And we have 11% working with arboriculture in general, and 28% other. So curious to know what other means for you. So please add that to the chat. We can adjust a bit on that. And also on whether you know your canopy cover of your community today, most of you, 43%, don't have a number. But we also have a few, 6% that has more than 50%. We have 6% again with between 40 and 50. We have 9% between 30 and 40, and 13 less than 20. And yeah, so we have a pretty good distribution. We have a few lucky ones with above 50. So congratulations to you, and exciting to know more about this. So, and before we leave it over to Chris, based on that we know more about your professions now, I will also publish the last poll for the webinar, which is a question like, do you have an urban forest management plan in place in your community? And of course, for those who represent the community, you can answer for yourself, but for the others, if you are aware that this kind of plan exists, you can also answer that. It's just a simple yes and no question. So please go ahead and submit your vote now. But now over to you, Chris.
All right. Well, thanks, Eric. And now I'll begin to discuss the methods to take the data and measurements that we gather from tools and technology and apply it to strategic management of the urban forest, green infrastructure, and urban green spaces. So we're taking you from assessment to action. And to start a conversation about urban forest management, I like to lead with a quote from James Clark out of a model of urban forest sustainability. And it reads, "Urban trees and forests are considered integral to the sustainability of cities as a whole. Yet sustainable urban forests are not born, they are made. They do not arise at random, but result from a community-wide commitment to their creation and management." So this quote is a great reminder that trees in communities are vital assets that require strategic planning using data and measurements to make sound management decisions. When we talk about the urban forest or green infrastructure and urban green spaces, we include the many types of landscapes that exist throughout a community. We look at the citywide overall tree canopy cover across public and private boundaries. Also the trees in parks and open space, those trees along streets and in medians, trees in private yards, as well as the trees in downtown areas. And in any landscape, there are measurements and planning approaches that can be conducted so that we sustain and enhance the environmental, economic, and social benefits that the trees provide. And we recognize that there are a wide range of benefits and services that community trees offer. Some can be measured and calculated, while others are a bit less tangible. And the objective of measuring your urban forest and applying the data to sound management is to maximize the benefits that the trees provide. And we understand that many benefits the trees provide to communities, but we also recognize challenges that trees face in urban environments. There's limited resources, changing climates, inefficient management programs. These are just some of the common challenges we find in communities. And one challenge that has been given a spotlight more recently is the idea of tree equity and addressing tree canopy disparity. And this is where oftentimes tree canopy is more abundant in wealthier neighborhoods. And this may be a result of past planning, city districting, and other factors. So using the measurements, tools, and data, we can address the urban forest disparity through strategic management. And we find this disparity to exist in small and large cities, from neighborhoods in Baltimore, Maryland, to areas of the Pacific Northwest, such as Portland, Oregon. And not just in the US, we find a disproportionate amount of tree canopy in neighborhoods far and wide, though we're beginning to see cities use the data to make strategic decisions on where to increase tree cover. So what does the tree canopy cover look like for your community? Whether you're here to learn how you can measure the urban forest to make sound management decisions, or you have a robust program that just needs some fine-tuning, there are planning efforts in the industry that aim to maximize the long-term benefits of trees and effectively manage the challenges that face the trees in communities. Oftentimes, the measurements and data from canopy assessments and other tools that were described earlier are applied to urban forestry plans. At the highest level, groups like the Nature-Based Solution Institute are strengthening the foundation of sound policies for urban forests and green infrastructure. And they're doing this by conducting policy reviews and preparing policy briefs for national governments and international organizations. And some of these organizations are then updating and improving their policies so that sound urban forest management practices can be conducted. In addition, the Institute is applying the 330-300 rule to strategic planning projects, with the objective of bringing green spaces closer to all residents of a community. And that's where we look for the rule to establish that everyone is able to see 3 trees from their home, live in a neighborhood with at least 30% tree canopy cover or vegetation cover, and be no more than 300 meters from the nearest green space. The next level of planning that applies data and measurements is the urban forest management and master plans. And these are sometimes referred to as urban green space or green infrastructure strategies. Oftentimes, it is in these plans where tree canopy goals and strategies are addressed. There are also other plans that apply measurements to management, such as planting plans to strategically grow the urban forest. So now I'll discuss some key components and things to consider when developing urban forest management and master plans. And then that will lead to our case study for this presentation. Our approach to urban forest management plans is a systematic process where each planning task informs the next. Planning projects typically include research deep dives, benchmarking, community engagement, staff and stakeholder interviews, and lastly, data analyses, which are conducted so that we gather an understanding of existing conditions. And then this planning element, the data analysis, is what I'll focus on for the next few slides. If you're looking to analyze the urban forest in your community, perhaps you'll begin with a tree canopy assessment that gives you the citywide view of the urban forest. To begin these types of assessments, it's important you answer the questions presented on this slide. And these questions are simplified into the fundamental project management questions. You need to identify who will be on your team and to get buy-in from other departments and groups that are impacted or affected. These may include stormwater management teams, watershed groups, planning departments, sustainability offices, as well as community groups. And perhaps the members of your team are outside of the normal urban forestry groups. You also need to know what you're measuring. Is it tree canopy and potential planting space? Or perhaps it's canopy change from 2 time periods so that you can inform policy and strategy changes. Analyzing the urban forest should also include the question of where will you be measuring? Is it citywide or perhaps specific neighborhoods of concern or where you know redevelopment is occurring? The timing of the assessment should be considered so that data and measurements can inform key planning efforts. So perhaps your community is updating its climate action plan, or you know that code rewrites are in the horizon. You'll want to have this data available when the timing is right. The why is a critical question, and it's sometimes the primary reason that an assessment gets off the ground. Perhaps it's to address tree equity, or to establish tree preservation policies, or enhance urban forest benefits in underserved communities. Lastly, how will the assessment be done now that you have the answers to these previous questions? Maybe it's a high-resolution tree canopy assessment, or you quantify your community's greenness using the HUGSI tool. Once you address the fundamental questions of project management, you'll need to ensure the measurements are fully leveraged to achieve management goals. With an urban forest assessment, successful outcomes can be achieved with community engagement, making sure the data is accessible using online platforms like Tree Plotter Canopy, developing goals in a strategic plan, conducting follow-up assessments, and adjusting strategies based on new measurements, as well as applying other resources and tools such as HUGSI, the 330-300 rule, and other tools and rules that are out there. So Tacoma, Washington, a city an hour south of Seattle, has undergone extensive measurements to manage their urban forests. In this case study, I've answered the fundamental project management questions, and I'll describe some of the processes and outcomes of these efforts. So some key takeaways here with the questions on the screen. The Sustainable Tacoma Commission was a key player. The assessment was done to inform the management plan. And one of the driving factors for conducting the assessment was that the city found that it has the lowest tree canopy cover in the Puget Sound region that which the city resides. So as shown on this slide, the city had many different types of spatial analyses that measured equity, urban heat islands and surface temperatures, correlations of tree canopy and socio-demographic data, looking at lower income areas, lower median household values, and the amount of tree canopy cover. And then the canopy assessment and the urban forest management plan for the city leverage these data sets to develop long-term management strategies that I'll describe in the upcoming slides. Using the assessment data, canopy goals and planting targets were developed. So on the left, we see the priority areas that were established for planting trees to address a variety of themes, from trees to reduce energy use, improve air quality, reduce stormwater volume runoff, to address underserved communities. And what you find here on the screen is a composite, an overlay of all those different themes and priorities. And we use that to establish the citywide canopy goal for Tacoma, which is 30% by the year 2030. And this is an ambitious goal. It's supported by City Council, and this would require planting approximately 10,000 trees per year. We make note that this should be a city public shared commitment. So we recommend 60% of plantings be led by the city, whereas the 40% are planted by partners and property owners themselves. Also, in addition to new trees going in the ground, the existing canopy cover is protected with recommended updates to Tacoma Municipal Code, and as well as to update city design guidelines. And these were recommendations provided in the Urban Forest Management Plan. So the city of Tacoma is an example of applying measurements to achieve sustainable urban forest outcomes. With the tree canopy assessment and management plan, canopy goals were established. We identified priority planting areas. We established a framework for a new in-house arborist crew, and the policies that impact and affect trees were strengthened. And through the implementation of the management plan, the city will grow a more sustainable and equitable urban forest. The Tacoma case study is just one of many. Small and large cities across the US and globe are applying data measurements to sound management practices. Whether your program is just getting off the ground or it's a well-oiled machine, updated measurements are essential for adaptive management. Perhaps your management plan needs updated with tree canopy measurements and strategies, or you're looking to enhance community tree stewardship. Gathering the data and measurements are one of the primary starting points to do any of these efforts going forward. So thinking about your next steps, the following slides provides just some examples of the types and tools and practices that can be used to strengthen your management program. And I was seeing participants from all different sectors and industries. A lot of this can be applied to the work that you do as it impacts the urban forest. And these different tools can be community surveys to program gap analyses, and these tools foster a team of advocates and build the case for projects that strengthen urban forest management. And it also looks to strengthen your urban forestry programs. Web-based management plans and project websites have grown in popularity in the industry, making the data, measurements, and management strategies more accessible to the public. And in our planning projects, we find that these project websites provide a platform to enable constant contact and supports continuous education and engagement. Oftentimes, we find that it's hard for someone to attend a public forum or an open house, but attending a virtual meeting or viewing the recording on the project website and accessing resources tends to go a long way, and it's more accessible to the community. One of the latest tools for urban forest data and measurements offered by PlanIT Geo is the Community Engagement Map. And this platform makes on-the-ground tree inventory data as well as the top-down canopy data accessible to the public. These interactive maps offer teaching moments for the general public, as well as new staff, and it can also be used to form new partnerships and new community tree stewards in your community. As shown on this slide, individual tree data including species, size, and ecosystem benefits are displayed along with the citywide tree canopy assessment data. And these two data sets together on one platform will demonstrate a community's effort in strategic planning to maximize the benefits of the urban forest. It puts the data at the hands of the public so that they can see in real time the trees in their community. And that concludes our journey from assessment to action, taking the measurements and applying them to management. In my presentation, I discussed the purpose of urban forest management, defined the urban forest and its benefits, along with the challenges trees face. I then discussed types of planning efforts from policy review plans to urban forest management plans. Then I highlighted the urban tree canopy assessments, the who, what, where, when, and why is to answer, and demonstrated the process with the Tacoma, Washington assessment and management plan case study. So at this time, I'd like to thank you all for your attention and open it up to questions and comments and turn it over to Eric and Ian. Thank you all.
Great. Thank you, Chris. And perhaps first a question for myself. Perhaps you can elaborate a bit more on the 330-300 rule.
Right. Yeah. So that's something from the Nature-Based Solution Institute that is looking at the rule that there should be at least 3 trees within proximity to a person in a community, and they should be residing in a community with at least 30% tree canopy cover or vegetative cover, having green space. And then the 300 meter portion of the rule is that you're within 300 meters of green space that allows for recreational activity and outdoor recreation.
Cool. I think that's a very simple rule and easy to understand, and perhaps not as easy to follow, but at least it could be a great ambition to follow that, for sure. And to all of you others, please add any questions in the questions tab, and we will follow that. And in the chat, we previously got a question from Daniela on the Google Environmental Insight Explorer platform, and I think Ian, you have provided some answers in the chat as well. And I think from my end, I think this is the Google Environmental Insight Explorer. It's a really cool and interesting initiative that cover a lot of different relevant areas in traffic, in energy, in solar, in air quality, and all of that. But they also cover tree canopy. So I think that there are a lot of different services and solutions for this topic all around. But comparing to HUGSI, for instance, we have a very strong green space focus and specialize in only that. And I think, Ian, you also provided a lot of answers on what differentiates PlanIT Geo to that being more actionable. And perhaps you want to elaborate on that, Ian.
Yeah, it's a relatively new tool. I actually, even while Chris was speaking, I took a look at it to see if anything was new from the last time that I looked at the Google tree canopy tool. So it seems very limited so far, but yeah, it has obviously overlap and similarities with what we're talking about today. So probably can't speak a whole lot more. I mean, it doesn't do certain things like create scenarios, and I don't believe you actually get a copy of the data to go use in other environments, whereas that seems really important. So I really like the question from Christine Carmichael. If you saw that one, Eric, about how to make the data more accessible to partners. Yeah. So I'm hoping that some of Chris's talk also kind of brought that to the surface and made that more clear. But it's a great topic. So in my mind, there are a number of ways to take this data and make it more accessible to partners. One, some of the community engagement map that Chris showed, that was a project that we pushed out this year to allow our analysis and our data to be able to be to embed into other websites. So if you want to take the data we've analyzed and then bring that into an existing website, you can do that very easily now, and people can click around and explore. So you may already have a website where you want them to go to learn about trees and tree canopy, and that was our intention with that. We often also in our consulting work will make various maps for audiences. So an example, we've been working with the Texas Trees Foundation, a nonprofit in the Dallas-Fort Worth, Texas area. And they were doing some work with the city of Dallas, and we created a series of maps to identify the different sort of domains or themes that are priorities to them in terms of the impact that they want to have on the community. So it could be related to schools, It could be related to natural areas, to parks, and really bringing in a lot of that information so they can go and have those conversations and identify and visually show where those opportunities are. Obviously, in what Chris talked about as well, hopefully it's obvious, the urban forest management planning and master planning process is a great way to bring in new stakeholders, for example, in underserved areas. So we'll take the data and limit down and focus on where are these underserved areas and how do we prioritize those, and then put those into more programs and policies that we can drive from the data analysis that say, in fact, I have a talk next week at the Arbor Day conference, and I'm speaking about Texas Trees Foundation and some of their work. They created a Cool Schools program, and they've now done urban greening in 25 different schools based on the canopy and land cover analysis that we gave them. So hopefully that helps answer your question a little bit, at least, Christine.
Super. And we also had another question from Charles on recommendations on measurements, and I guess, Chris, you're replying to that right now, I can see, but perhaps you can also reply verbally now.
Right. Yep. I was going to either address it through text or I can address it here. And what I wanted to mention was that a lot of the common measurements that we see communities gathering looks at species diversity, relative age and size class of the public tree population, as well as the overall distribution of trees across different land uses, getting an understanding of where these trees are. And this is routinely done with on-the-ground inventories. The top-down canopy assessments, you get the measurements of extent of tree canopy cover, possible planting areas. So these are all metrics and measures that communities gather where we start to develop management plans and strategies from this the measurements that are gathered. And we also look at relative performance index of certain species. So that measures how well a species is doing compared to the overall tree population. And you take a look at the condition ratings for species compared to the health of the urban forest. Other things, importance values, how greatly do the certain types of species of trees in your population affect the benefits and the structure of your urban forest. So those are just some of the measurements. We then get into things like trees per capita, budget per tree, different types of metrics that we can compare to industry standards as well as to other communities. Again, to get to a point where we're developing strategies and a plan.
Yeah, just to Charles' question too, I would add there's a couple things to add. It's really common to look at some sort of condition or health metric of the tree. Because we operate globally, we do have clients that do that in very different ways within our software. So there's a SULE is used, not so much in the United States, but that's safe, useful life expectancy. We see that quite a bit in the UK and Australia with our clients. We actually let them really customize the data fields that they collect on trees and that they track over time. So we've seen everything under the sun that you can imagine. We have some clients that probably have 60 or 70 or 80 data fields per tree if they want to collect that. But recommended maintenance is really common. Risk assessment, as you mentioned, is really common. We try to create lots of tables and graphs and charts that sort of splice this information together. So you might look at what are the size of trees that are recommended for removal? What are the size of trees and what are the common species that are have a priority 1 pruning or a priority 2 pruning? So those kind of constructs as well. In terms of the software, we support for risk assessment methodologies, we support, I believe, 3 or 4 different methodologies. In the US, for our field team, we're primarily using the ISA tree risk assessment qualification. So all of our team are track qualified. But we support the QTRA, which is quantified tree risk assessment out of the Mike Ellison out of the UK. And I feel like I'm missing one. We have similar approach to appraisals because there's a lot of different methodologies for tree appraisals as well. So Valid is another good example. So
yeah, Super. We also have a question from John on other cities that have included their HUGSI modeling in strategic plan process and for directing actions annually for tree planting and tree equity efforts on the global scale. And I would say that the purpose of HUGSI is perhaps not to step into that level of detail, more on the quantifying, the tracking of progress and benchmarking. But together with solutions like PlanIT Geo, and perhaps you can follow up on that, Ian, you can really find these the insights on where to focus and prioritize your planting efforts.
Yeah, I think HUGSI in the U.S. is very new. It's just really probably gaining awareness, especially in the last couple of months. And I mean, to Eric's point, yeah, it's definitely meant for more of a global kinds of trends or regional type of trends. Eric, maybe the work that you're doing in the Netherlands with the challenge right now is an example of where. And that's why Chris was presenting on the sort of scale at which we perform or provide planning and policy reports related to urban greening. That as Cecil's work, it tends to be, he's on our board of advisors. His work that we wanted to acknowledge is kind of at that policy level. And I think that's where HUGSI has the greatest direct impact. So, I think the Netherlands is going to have probably very soon the largest at a country level, the largest database on their greening of cities on an annual basis, right? And I would assume, Eric, that they're using that to then really go more to kind of broader, higher level policy influencers.
Yeah, exactly. And I think that what we're doing in the Netherlands right now is something called the Green City Challenge, where we, together with other partners, in that case Sweco and NL Green Label, are also offering this kind of very high resolution detailed data together with the more sort of umbrella data from HUGSI, where we can go from these different perspectives and really help driving policies. So I think that's a great addition to that. I think Daniela was also following up on her question on the Google solution, but with the question if we have thought about working with the city network. And I know, Daniela, you're representing one of those. And I think from HUGSI perspective, we would happily engage with that kind of networks. And also the original initial 98 cities of HUGSI was based on the city network called C40. So we are happy from our end to collaborate. And I know, Ian, if you want to add something from your side as well.
I'm not. First of all, I'm not familiar with the Action Fund specifically. I'm looking at your messages as they come in, though. But yeah, to echo what Eric said, I'm more than happy to learn more about that. I am familiar with ICLEI, though, and I do think there's great opportunities to collaborate with the sort of groundswelling of information, both broad and high resolution, that's coming together. So would love to talk about that, Daniela.
Exactly. I'm just reading the comment from John here as well. Being a worldwide green measure app for cities, HUGSI could be used in year-to-year analysis for successes of past actions. Yeah, exactly. I think that exactly what we try to do with HUGSI. So for all the cities that are part of HUGSI, we are updating on a yearly basis, so you can track the development year on year and for all the different KPIs. So as I said in the beginning, it's like the fitness app for urban green space and urban greenification. So with this, you can actually on a high scale track the progress of your city's greenification. So that's pretty much the point. So that's great. Super. Let's see if we have any final questions or comments. Really happy about the engagement and interaction in this. We had also the poll question on urban forest management plans, and the actual answer based on this crowd is that 60% has a forest management plan and 40% don't yet. So I think that could be good to know as well going forward. Great. If there were any final things, no. Perhaps we should try to wrap it up. We have a slight overrun in time, but I'm happy to do that because we have all these great interactions going. And a final message, of course, if you want to see your city part of HUGSI.green, then we have an offer where you can join for a one-time fee. And of course, you will be part of the index. You will be part of this yearly recurring updates and get this ranking with this dedicated page. But you're also part of the community in HUGSI, sharing learnings, knowledge between you in the benchmarking. So if you're interested in this or want to share this with your city, please send an email to hello@hugsi.green. You can also send an email there if you have any feedback or comments or stuff like that, so we can keep in touch. But I think that now it's just to say thanks a lot for attending and being part of this great webinar. Thank you, Ian. Thank you, Chris. Thank you to all participants. We had a great time, I think. Any final words, Ian and Chris?
No, let's just keep the conversation going. We'd love to hear from you and get feedback on what we're doing, and hopefully be involved in some collaborations. So really appreciate all the Q&A.
Super. Thanks a lot, guys. And let's just wrap this up and say goodbye.
Have a great day.
All right. Thanks, everyone.
Have a great day. Yeah, thank you.